Oh, I didn't have to ask for permission that time.
Oh, nice.
All right. You ready?
Do it.
All right. Welcome to Essential Coaching Conversations with Kyle and Asim.
The real, relevant, necessary conversations to help you navigate coaching, teaching, learning, and life.
Coaches, welcome in to our final episode of 2024, our year in review. We got a lot of things slated here to talk about. We're going to give you the best stuff first, and hopefully you stick with us to the end. And we're sort of on a crunch here because Kyle's laptop is at 19% right now. 17%. So we're going to go quick.
Fast.
We're going to go quick because the charger's at the office. We have all been there. I think you and I have both been there when it's time for a scout to get done or when we're watching film and it's all of a sudden you get that range anxiety like on an electric car, right? We're running out of juice. So we'll go quick. Kyle, what was the best thing you saw over the last week?
So this is like the best thing you saw / heat the cheese award kind of moment or award, right? So I have to dive into our Thursday night group chat where our buddy Layden, who we got a chance to go or not go speak to his classes, but virtually speak to his leadership class, which we mentioned, I think, on the last episode or two, which again, I think is really, really cool that they've got the space to do that. He sent us a screenshot of a newspaper article, I'm assuming talking about their girls' basketball season. It's just a little snippet here, but it's from one of their seniors, first name's Chloe, talking about what she's looking forward to or thinking about her senior season that's coming up. And she says, quote, "It's going to be a fun season. We going to heat the cheese."
Love it.
Heat the Cheese has a story behind it. And then they give a little summary. And it's like, man, how do you not go with a Heat the Cheese reference for the Heat the Cheese segment? And the best thing that we saw. And that's really cool because, again, you and I have got a chance to speak to both their classes, and we know Layden has told that story over and over again. He even reached out and asked us for the podcast episode where we dove into that so he could make sure the story was told correctly. And so it's cool that story continues to be shared with a number of people and the next generation that's coming up, and that's part of our exponential generational change push that you and I are so into. So yeah, that was mine. That was really cool to get that the other morning and read that and see hashtag Heat the Cheese in some local Ohio newspaper.
So I actually just texted Layden and he doesn't, this will come out, I think, after he responds, hopefully, but I think we're going to gift them some Heat the Cheese hoodies.
Yes, we should.
I used to do that for my teams at Brandeis and at other places. So, not the biggest deal in the world, but they deserve some Heat the Cheese gear. And honestly, like that was so cool, right? To see that in print in a newspaper, right? The Heat the Cheese just mantra being repeated, and then the kids like hang on to it. And I think that was probably the best part about when Bubba shared that story with us and we first sort of coined this as a phrase and something that we should be doing and aware of, is that it was that sticky language that kids can just grab onto. And they're like, yes, this is something that makes sense to me. And it's sort of a rallying cry, right? And we've talked about this before where like the other athletes at places we've been, when we've introduced this, or even just the other students, right, will walk around and just say it to you and like yell it out to each other. And it's like, well, that's pretty cool, man. Like that is creating some exponential generational change right there. So shout out to Layden.
The cheese be cold guy. That's what I always get from like the elementary kids.
Yeah.
When I was teaching, they'd be like, "Hey, it's cheese be cold."
It always like a call and a response, right? Like cheese be cold, and then somebody else would say heat the cheese.
Heat the cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Well, actually, I did send them some stickers
nice.
Maybe about a couple months ago. So there's a little branding floating around up there, but I love the idea of sending them some hoodies because I'm sure it's cold in Ohio. I've never been.
It's very cold in Ohio.
But I imagine that would be money well spent because that would get used quite often.
I think so too.
What's the best thing you saw?
Well, I want to shout out some of the media actually that is heating the cheese on Doug Gottlieb. You and I have a track record for calling out some of this stuff. I think because we are fairly reflective and we sort of look at it and we see the writing on the wall. And even some of the folks that we're around and that we talk to relatively, often look at people like JJ Redick, look at people like Doug Gottlieb, and we sort of like look around and we're like, does anybody else see this? Like, what a gigantic waste of taxpayer money right now to have Doug Gottlieb as the head coach at Green Bay, and he's still doing his radio show. They're 2-11, and he's talking about somebody else being nobody you. And that nobody you, Montana, what was it? Montana Tech, Wisconsin Tech, whoever it was, came in and beat them on their home floor. My guy, you've got to do better. Right. And so, like, I have a buddy who sends me articles nearly every day about another like call out of Doug Gottlieb and why this is like an offense to the coaching profession. And honestly, like, that's not hyperbolic to me. Like, I don't think that that's hyperbolic to say that this is offensive to the coaching profession. Right. Here's somebody who's never coached before in their entire life. Right. Besides being an assistant on the Maccabea games a couple times, which cool. Right. Like, that's something. Right. But it's JJ Redick at least coached a team for an entire summer, right, with his fourth grade AAU team. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why ADs and why decision makers look at this and they're like, yeah, we should go hire Doug Gottlieb to coach our basketball team as someone who has never done that before. And yeah, we'll let him keep his radio show and his podcast. In what world? Right? How many coaches looked around like that was a slap in the face? All right. Sundance Wicks did a great job at Green Bay. He's now the head coach at Wyoming. Good for Sundance Wicks. You know what, though? Sundance Wicks had a whole career before getting to Green Bay where he cut his teeth and he worked his ass off to get to the D1 level. And just because Doug Gottlieb played and then he's a radio host, I mean, it's the same thing as when Arkansas hired, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but he was the coach before Mike Neighbors, and he came straight from being a broadcaster and failed miserably. Right? Like, anyway, so there was this article though, from Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers, by Sam Fetterman. It was yesterday. The headline: Rise and Shine, it's time to talk about Green Bay. And we'll link this in the show notes. But, basically giving the history of why Doug Gottlieb was hired. They hired this sentence right here: Green Bay hired a radio host to be their basketball coach, with his only qualification being that he played Division I basketball a long time ago. If that doesn't sum it up, I don't know what does. So anyway, that was the best thing I saw, is just the dragging of what was clearly a terrible decision to begin with, and some of those hens coming home to roost, if you will, of like, we told you so. And I have it listed out right here. On June 27th, we talked about JJ Redick for a whole episode. Now, that episode could have been entitled Doug Gottlieb, right? It could have been entitled any of these things, of like, hey, maybe don't hire a broadcaster for a high profile head coaching job. Right. Anyway, so I am grateful that I'm getting these things sent to me, because it just sort of proves the point. And listen, it's not like sour grapes or anything. Like, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care about Green Bay. What I do care about, though, is those kids having a great experience and like being coached well. It sucks to be 2-11 in December. Right? That's brutal. But it's also avoidable. Well, that's my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, and we weren't involved in the hiring process and the decision making, and we don't know. I mean, who was interested in the job, and there's a lot of context and nuance in all of these things that we're not privy to for sure. But there's two people that run through my mind every time a hiring decision is made, and it's the kids that are going to have to play for whoever was hired, and then it's everybody who didn't get the opportunity. for that position based on whatever it is. And we know that regardless of levels and regardless of sport, there are a ton of really great teachers out there that coach the game of basketball, and a lot of great coaches that teach the game of basketball. For some reason, those people don't seem to be as high on lists as those that quote unquote know basketball. And so those that can sit around and talk about it in a way that the public finds entertaining, or that a hiring committee finds entertaining, seems to take a bit of precedent or priority, I would say, over those that can actually teach the game, or just teach in general and connect with people and understand how to do those kinds of things. And like, obviously there's going to be some extreme scenarios, like Bill Belichick's going to go coach football at North Carolina. I don't see him sitting around connecting over ping pong and wings with, 20-year-old transfer portal student, but the dude can coach football. Like, that's an outlier, right? Like, I'm still interested in how that's going to work out. And they've committed like $20 million to NIL and all this kind of stuff. But when you think about, okay, this person played the game, so therefore they know it. They can talk about it in conversation that makes it sound really smart, that the layperson couldn't possibly comprehend how much basketball they know. And so therefore that's good enough to get through a press conference or to go to a practice and it seem organized or not or whatever. But at the end of the day, when you're 2-11, you have to start motivating kids to show up to want to practice hard. And I don't know how many of you listening have been 2-11 in December before. I have. And it's freaking hard. But some of my best work, some of my best coaching was when you're 2-11 in December. And you have to get those kids to believe that we could be 3-11 after Friday. And to me, that's what coaching really is. And that's I don't know Doug from Adam. I don't know JJ from Adam. Maybe they're doing some things behind the scenes we don't know of. But I know a lot of people that can do that who don't get to sniff these kinds of jobs because the profile or where they've come from. And to me, that is what is crazy, is how do you, as somebody who has dedicated your entire life to a craft, how do you get over or deal with not even getting a sniff because somebody else had a podcast and their name is known? And we even talk about this too, and not all of these hires are bad. Some of them do work out, but even just people that have never coached but have played, going straight from a playing career, not necessarily a broadcast career into coaching, but a playing career in coaching.
Yep.
The young lady that was it North Carolina lacrosse? Help me here.
Field hockey,
that won a natty at like 23 years old, like the year after she graduated. And again, there are going to be situations with that quote unquote work, or doesn't matter who was coaching that team because they were so talented. And you can point to certain instances, but you can point for every one of those, there's 1,000 others that don't work or fail miserably. And even in the short term, it may seem to work, but what is that program going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because of the unintended consequences of who's running it and the decisions that are being made? Or maybe that person is the head coach, but they're more of a figurehead, or they're this or they're that, and they've got great assistants and great administration around. You can insulate, bad head coaches with great environments, just like you can insulate teams that aren't real talented with great environments. You can make up for weaknesses with really great strengths, but those really great strengths are probably outliers and aren't going to last for the long term. And when you think about trying to give student athletes the best possible experience, just where I've gotten over the years and getting old and white in my beard and all this, is just who can teach, who can coach, who can connect, who can motivate, and who's going to be a really good fit here. And I'll take my chances with that cocktail over somebody that can sit down and draw something on a board and talk about it, and they've got X number of followers over here, or X number of audience over here, or they know this particular person. And I hope Green Bay is 11-11, and the kids turn it around because you want those kids to have a great experience. Occam's razor, I just don't think that's going to happen.
I would agree with you. And like as you were talking, and I had this thought, I actually have it written down here as well. And I didn't mention it before, but I'm glad you said what you said. A lot of this reminds me of when you and I would be in a parent meeting and the parent said, well, I played blah, 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 and I know the game and I coached these kids when they were young and da, 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 da. Who cares? I don't care that you played Division I softball back in the 80s. That matters not to me. That doesn't help us right now with the fact that your kid doesn't get what's going on, and we're in here having this conversation because you think you know better. Right? And so I actually think that the shameless self-promotion, right, that like Doug Gottlieb does and that JJ Redick did on his podcast with LeBron James and all that, like that's fine. Go get your bag, right? Nobody's upset about you going to get your bag. But I do think it's really insulting. I think it's really insulting, like you said, for people who have dedicated their entire life to building that craft, for somebody to just jump and get to where you're trying to go because they have, X amount of clout within some industry, really just that grinds my gears. Like that's just, it is truly insulting to the profession that there are, people like, and I'll go back to one of the friends of the pod, like Ed Silva, right? Ed Silva is one of the best coaches I know. This guy has 20 plus years in college basketball. He played, right? He's got all the credentials in the world. If Green Bay was smart, they'd be calling that guy because he has done more with less every year of his career and manages to figure it out. Is he winning championships? No. Is he changing lives? Absolutely. And the more we think about it, how many of these like schools like Green Bay are even going to make a tournament in the next 5-7 years with the way that the tournament is going, right? Even though they're trying to expand the field to 72 and do all this stuff, let's be realistic.
Well, let's be real about that. We can expand. There's 350 something Division I basketball teams.
Yeah.
Like the percentage there, even if they continue to expand that, the percentage of teams that make it aren't sniffing what you get in like bowl season for football, right?
Right.
Or half the teams are getting it. I mean, and shout out, we're in.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So, and we'll freaking take it. We're pumped about it. But a lot more football teams get into a bowl game than a lot of basketball teams get into the NCAA tournament. And let's be real, the more this stuff continues to expand, even in the CFP, it's not for the Green Bays of the world. It's to get in 18 and 16 UCLA, right? Like it's to get in mid-high majors.
Yeah, it's to get in your money-making teams that just had a down year or they're a big brand or whatever, right? And so, listen, I get it from the branding aspect, right, of hiring Doug Gottlieb. It's a splashy hire.
Yeah, we're talking about it.
Brings a lot of eyeballs. We're talking about it. Yeah.
No press is bad press, which I don't think is true in 2024.
Right.
But we have sat here and dedicated some time on a podcast to it. So for sure, it has generated some interest or some buzz or some awareness towards their program.
But when you're tied for last in the Horizon League going into January, and I'm sure there's probably an MTE coming up or something where they can go get smacked around 2 or 3 more times, your buzz higher, that the shine wears off pretty quick. And when the rubber meets the road, you got to be able to show up the next day and engage your guys and get them to practice hard and get them ready to play. And yeah, some of that might be he thought, I can surround myself with really good people as assistants and they can handle a lot of that stuff and I'll be the figurehead. And dude, you don't get to be the figurehead as the first time coach. That's the issue, right? Is like when you're Bill Belichick, you get to be the figurehead.
Yeah.
You get to be the one that has the final meeting with the top guys that seals the deal. right? That's what Mac Brown was doing at North Carolina too. Like those are guys that they don't need to. Everybody still needs to continue to work as if it's their first time and all of that stuff, but it can't be your first time and you not work.
To me, the biggest issue is not getting beat by Michigan Tech. I mean, hell, Rice lost to UNT Dallas yesterday in high school. There are dudes at every level.
100%.
Everybody is a threat to get beat in a game of basketball. Like football is a little different just because of the physicality and the nature and 11 guys on the field. When you got 5 people on a floor, one person is 20% of the action. That it can happen, right? Like you get a dominant pitcher in softball or baseball, it can happen. Soccer, the winning and losing margin is so fickle and small in soccer because one call in the box and it's PK. Like the margin is so small. It's not to say that you shouldn't ever lose to an NAIA or anything like that, because there's no disrespect from us, at least, towards that, because we know that there's talent and great coaches at all levels, which is part of our platform here to talk about how there's an NAIA or a D2 or a D3 that can go out and beat a D1. And there's some logistical issues nowadays where transfer portals and, people, the talent level has been dispersed a little bit more and so on and so forth. But it's the disrespect coming from him toward nobody you.
Exactly.
That's the problem. That's where you and I are getting DMs and text messages and phone calls about this, because you're saying, you know what, if I had the opportunity to coach at Green Bay and got beat by nobody you, we would take that as an opportunity to reflect and go back and get better and respect the game of basketball a hell of a lot more, because how you lose those games is not respecting it. And then to go up there and talk about it like that proves that you're not ready or in a position to run a program in such a fashion. Some D1 team out there today is probably going to get beat by a team they're not supposed to. It happens. But that's part of the game. That's part of the maturation process. That's part of using your platform as a leader to teach kids about life, things that we say to get the job. But to go up there and continually disrespect the opponent and the game, to me, that's where the line needs to be drawn. Because you're not, that is the disrespect to the profession. It's not what you lack in an X and O, and not even really like how you run your practice or anything like that. It's that public face of this is how we're going to treat the game that we are all supposed to love.
No, I absolutely agree. And I wish Doug Gottlieb nothing but the best at Green Bay, and we'd love to help out. Hit us up. Start listening to the podcast. Like some of the when we think about a year in review, this is actually a great segue to that. A little bit of brutal honesty might go a long way for Doug Gottlieb. Maybe he needs to try to coach like an artist and optimize their performance through using tech. All things that we talked about this year, right?
Play more tag.
Play more tag, like your T-shirt says, available on Bonfire.
Heat the cheese a little.
Heat the cheese a little bit. Play is life. Ball is not life. Play is life. All right. Maybe have a conversation with the fearless coach, Becky Carlson. Our most listened to episode, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, of 2024 was that episode with Becky Carlson, which she's the best. But here's one that this was probably my favorite that we did, was the one about, do adults get in the way? And I think in this Doug Gottlieb situation, I think the adults did get in the way. Right? To serve their own ego or whatever it was, the adults got in the way and the kids are suffering the most, I think. But that was my favorite episode. We released that one on May 9th. Go back and listen to it. I absolutely thought that one, and then obviously the one that was right before it, the fearless coach, those two episodes to me really sum up what 2024 was about. More and more hands in the pot, more and more cooks in the kitchen who don't know what they're doing, and tend to ruin the experience for kids. Just my thoughts. What do you think?
No, I agree. That episode was great. That's probably my favorite one we did this year, where again, not just you and me rambling all the time. I learned the most because we shut up for a little bit and listened to somebody else talk. But I love the play is life, ball is not life double episode. We got a chance to do some Olympic reactions, which were funny because you didn't even watch the Olympic reactions or watch the Olympics. So your reactions were much different than mine because I watched every second. So I thought that was kind of just a fun, quirky episode that we got a chance to do. I guess that would have been late summer during the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, man, I had to go back and look at the beginning of the year because it feels like early part of 2024 was so long ago because so much has happened. Just for me since then, and us going through leadership change at the university and the athletic department and getting moved into a yet again kind of a new role. I can't wait to find out what I do next year because it's always it's going to be something different. It feels like all the time. But yeah, it's been, I think 2024 for me as a whole was a great year. We had some health scares in the family, and those ended up being okay. And everybody is in a good spot, right now in December of or last week or two, I guess, of 2024. And Kendall's finished up a great second grade year, had a great start to her third grade year. She's doing really well. Megan's doing really well. Maddie's still kicking strong at 16 years old.
Crushing it.
She's crushing it. As a 16-year-old rescued stray cat when Megan and I were dating. So Megan and I hit our 15th wedding anniversary this summer. So yeah, just going back through our Thanksgiving episode and thinking about, or I think it was the chat, we did gratitude and reflection, and just thinking about some of the stuff that has happened and how much I've grown professionally and personally over the year, going from what we were coining external ops to now external affairs, and having 4 departments, building another department, and having to manage so many people in a different light, in a different world, going from managing junior high and high school kids to grown adults. That's been a bit of a lesson and a challenge for me.
It is a little bit different, isn't it?
It's way different, man. Like, I mean, people are people, but people are different at different stages in life. And it's weird, or not to say weird. It's different and a little bit more challenging sometimes, I think, when you're dealing with a grown adult, because we're kind of set in our ways, and, everybody's got opinions, and it's great. I mean, I think an adult's going to challenge you a little bit more than a kid is a lot of times. Like a kid will challenge you just because they're, they don't want to do what they don't want to do, but you bench them, or you put them in the corner, or you send them to the principal's office or whatever. Adults challenge you in really great ways because they got more to offer you, and you can learn from them. And that's been a lot of fun, just kind of exploring that space, learning how to run a video board after never touching a video board in my life, and being responsible for one that cost $7 million. That was kind of fun.
When you put it that way, it's a hefty responsibility, isn't it?
it's didn't know it, never been a part of it ever, and got a chance to figure that out. And then just, I mean, Dr. Henderson and Ryan Ivey, like President AD, just new people that come into your life over the course of a year, and people that believe in you and challenge you and put you in situations to challenge yourself. That to me has been kind of the theme of my 2024 year, of just being like, hey, Kyle, you can do this. We trust you. Go do it, to the best of your ability, and just getting to stretch and try something new and different. And I mean, creatively have grown, building a brand, the Bark Louder brand, having to create imagery for it and content for it. And just, it's a lot, but it's been really, really, really good. And so very, very thankful, but also hopeful that this will kind of momentum will carry us into 25. And again, just 2024, great pod. Playmakers has grown. I mean, our guy Eric out in Mesa, Arizona is killing it.
He sure is.
Absolutely crushing it. I mean, you talk about changing lives and setting up the next generation. Guy has done, he leads the nation in playmakers right now. And so we're pumped for him and what he's doing, and appreciate everybody that's been a part of that, and all of the chapters that have sprung up across the country. this year. So that's a little bit about kind of me just thinking and reflecting on a year in review about where I was, where I've gotten to. Definitely a year older. I hit 40 in 2025, so I'm a little nervous about that, but I'm also a little excited about it too.
They say 40 is the new 20, though.
Do they?
I've heard.
Who's they?
They just nebulous. 90% of them say that 40 is the new 20.
Yeah, it's it is funny when you get around family and stuff. Parents are late 60s, but then like cousin Don comes in and he's like 85 and he sees my dad and he's like, "Hey, young fella," he's viewing my dad who's like 68, like as the young guy, and then everybody that's 55 views 40 as young. I look at 30-year-olds now and I'm like, "Oh, you're a baby." So I mean, it's all about perspective, I guess.
But right, it's all relative, right?
It's all relative. Yeah,
when you're 85 years old, everybody's young to you.
Everybody's young. Yeah.
And then you see somebody who's 100 and you're like, "Hey, I still, you were 15 when I was born. You're old, right?" Like
looking at the 82-year-old, "Hey, young fella."
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's good, man. That's no, it's been a great year. It's been fun to watch you from afar have the successes that you've had and take everything in stride. And just the late nights where you're like, "Man, I just got home from this event. We got 10 more events tomorrow and 85 different meetings and stuff." And it's like it's awesome to watch you handle all of that with such grace and like the enthusiasm with which you are accepting the challenge of doing something you've never really done before, but that you were prepared to do because of the way that you cut your teeth through. Listen, if you can teach and coach junior high, you can do pretty much anything.
You can do pretty much anything, man.
Right. And I think
that's prepare you for a lot.
That is the ultimate, to me, like disrespect from corporate America just as a whole, is like they don't value the fact that if you've taught 6th grade special ed math, like you have something in you, like you got that dog in you. You know what I mean? Just to use one of those coach speak phrases, like if you looked at the x-ray of our chests, there would be a little pit bull hanging out by our hearts. You know what I mean? Because like it is such a unique skill set to be able to do that, and you can go do anything from doing that. Especially with somebody like you who's done it so well, and I'm really proud of you for all the ways that you've grown this year, and just like again, they threw a lot at you, right?
Yeah.
A lot, and you're like, "Okay, bet, cool," right? And you figured it out. And that to me is probably the coolest part. I'm hopeful in 2025 there are more promotions coming your way, and Bark Louder continues to grow, and just we put Louisiana Tech back on the map where it should be.
Where it should be, baby.
I think the bowl game is a huge opportunity to do that.
Yeah, you want to talk about, you think you got everything planned, and you like, I was even telling somebody the other day, it's like, "Oh man, December, we only have 7 home events all month." Like we'll have 7 on one day in February, and it was just how relatively easy December was going to be, and light, and just, oh man, this is going to be great. And then boom, we find out last Sunday, hey, we're going to a bowl game, and usually you get a month to prepare for a lot of the logistics and stuff. And luckily, we're right up the road at Shreveport, but we've had like 5 days to pull all this together, and it's amazing. If anybody out there is interested in operations or logistics, to think about everything that has to happen to mobilize something like this. And again, we're an hour away in Ruston to Shreveport, and we've obviously have a really great history with the Independence Bowl, and I think it's the second oldest running bowl in the country. And Radiance Technologies is the sponsor. That guy's a Tech alum, and the Army, I think, is like his best customer. So I mean, he's pumped because
he's all in it, huh?
He's got both of us coming, and so I mean, it's really cool. And this might be a podcast episode for later, but we're actually working on some content right now that we'll put out soon. One of my really talented creative video guys, Waylon, was working on this yesterday. You think about senior athletes on senior day playing their last game, taking the jersey off, unlacing the cleats,
Mm-hmm.
cleaning out the locker, like the emotions of what the career being over feels like and means, and knowing that that's your last opportunity, and just the wave of emotion that you have to process to know that, like, okay, I've got to start transitioning. So shout out to our
Right.
episode with Wyatt of like, how do I become not an athlete anymore? And then all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, hey, this is not a prank call. You get to play one more time.
Mm-hmm.
You get to put the pads on one more time. And I think about guys like Zach Zymos, True Edwards, Michael Clark, Jaron Gilbert, DeMarcus Griffin Taylor, phenomenal human beings. Jaron Gilbert, I said Jaron, Bert Hale, phenomenal human beings that do things the right way, that are
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal student athletes, good human beings, do things the right way for their university, and deserve a chance to play another football game and continue to do what they love. And so we got a chance to sit down with them yesterday and ask them about those emotions and what that feels like. And I'm really excited to see how Waylon captured that.
Oh, I
And
can't wait to see
we'll
that. Yeah, that's
obviously
gonna be
put that
awesome.
out. But I think that could end up being this really great episode, because we have talked about this in some vein before coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, if I could just get one more practice with my guys, if I could just coach those girls one more time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that perspective was lost like 2 weeks into, the world kind of opening back up again. And I'm pumped to see how they respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and again, like, we just hired a new offensive coordinator. We don't know if our defensive coordinator's here or there. Like, they have to scrap all this together. And when football, especially, is such a highly organized, choreographed thing, hey, we just got to figure this out. Like, forget your practice schedules, your meeting schedules. We're going to install the offense in 18 phases, and we're going to do that. Nope. We're showing up. We're playing football, and you got to defend the triple option against the most disciplined people in the world. Good luck.
I'm really hopeful that y'all are making like a documentary about this, because this is kind of like the perfect storm, right? Like it's everybody thought it was over. You got a 2 week thing, and then boom, hey, in a few days we got to play. And yeah, we don't have the time to do this. So like, what becomes essential? What becomes important? What becomes the things that we have to really care about? And do we have essential elements that we can fall back on, that our guys know, and that we know the language and all of that stuff, right? I think
No
that
doubt.
that's like, I mean, that is it's going to be a masterclass, I think, in true coaching, and also getting out of the way and letting your guys just go play.
Well,
Right.
and understanding too, like, bowl season is all about who wants to be there, right? And again, like, I think Army's a little different here. They're used to dealing with some adversity, and they're built a little different. But they go from being top 25 and think they're going into the playoff, and then they have a rough day against Navy, and their running back goes in the portal, and if we're just going to sit here and be transparent. If you're on social media, it's like, oh, they don't want to play this 5-7 team from Ruston and travel to Shreveport. They're not going to want to be there. Our guys are jacked up about it. But again, you're playing like one of the most disciplined groups in the world,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a great challenge for us to see how we step up to that on such short notice, and the way that their offense is run. And we had a top 15 defense in the country this year, and so to me, like, I'm excited just to see the pure sport matchup there.
Sure.
And I do think it is a great challenge and lesson in true coaching, like people that can actually teach and connect, because it is going to be like, hey, you got to want to be there on December 28th for an 8:15 p.m. kickoff
Oh,
in
brutal.
Shreveport, Louisiana. In the Independence Bowl. It is going to not so much be about the X's and O's piece and who's got the dive and who's got the pitch. And I mean, that stuff will be important, but it's who can get up after that play
Mm-hmm.
and then want to play another down. And I think our guys are extremely hungry and motivated. And, Zach is an incredible human being. One of our linebackers, all conference linebackers. And he's got such great perspective, and just like, I would love to sit down with him over lunch and kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. But I think this is something that you and I can explore in 25 on, just when you're thrown a curveball and you've got your scout laid out, you've got your practice plan laid out, you've got all this stuff, and you're highly regimented, and that's kind of what makes you great because you're a machine, or we're like an army.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden something is thrown at you that is unlike anything you've ever had to deal with. Like, how can you continue to move forward? And I really do think it does become, all right, what is essential, what is important? And I think you and I have done a pretty good job of that, learning and developing over our professional and personal careers and lives. And, as we jump into this in 2025, I think this bowl lesson and some of the reflection you and I have had is a great chance for us, even as a business and as a podcast, to find out what's most essential for us,
Mm-hmm.
and see if we can even scale back and find out what's really important and talk about those important things, so we can continue to bring hopefully what people perceive as really great content, thought production, and reflection, so that they can get better in their professional and personal lives as well. So I'll just say thank you to everybody out there for listening. Thanks for being with us in 24, and look forward to seeing you on the other side in 25.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll echo that. I really am looking forward to that content coming out. And so speaking of content, just as we wrap up here, we are going to try some new things, as Kyle said. What's most essential in 2025. We are going to try to do some more short form content. Obviously, we're on TikTok. Hopefully, TikTok doesn't get banned. It probably will on January 19th, but if it doesn't, we'll stay on there. But we're also we're going to start doing some shorter pod episodes, kind of like 15, 20, 25-minute kind of quick hits on topics of the day, things that are important to us, and just kind of ways that you can digest some of this in a little bit shorter fashion. Great for things like mowing the lawn, walking the dog, stuff like that, right? Trying to reach you where you are, a little bit shorter content, a little bit more focused in terms of like one topic at a time. And just trying that. I mean, we'll still have some of the long form stuff, I think, especially if we have guests and whatnot, but trying to just do some different things and probably honestly bring you more, but more quality stuff. So, for all of us here at Essential Coaching Conversations and just Essential Coaching in general, all of our OGs, our spouses, our pets, from everybody that cares about what we do, it's been a great 4 years of doing this. And hopefully year 5 is the best one yet, and we'll just keep it moving. But hope everybody has a safe holiday season. Kyle's computer, I believe, is on 4%, so we did make it.
Good guess.
Oh, heck yeah. Look at that. And just, yeah, thank you for listening, and please share far and wide. And we look forward to seeing y'all back in 2025.